First time ever seen them here. Came over and visited me. Uh, and yeah, we're keeping busy. So there's some things to do to keep the property in shape and so forth. So Drista Govinda's here and Chandramukhi and Kishore Krishna helping me. But it's good to be with all of you. Hope the internet connection holds up. So far, it looks good. What are the questions?
Wonderful. So the questions today, the first question is from Doyle Nitai in Bulgaria.
Hmm.
And Doyle Nitai present this question. Pranam Guru Maharaj. I would appreciate your guidance regarding the Mridu stage of Anartha Nivritti as described in Madhurya Kadambini.
Which stage?
The Mridu, M-R-D-U, Mridu stage.
I don't remember that, but go ahead.
He says, when I'm able to be conscious of an anartha being triggered in me, and there is emotional pain or frustration, I notice that consciously remembering Krishna and taking shelter of the proper philosophical understanding often brings some relief and clarity, even though the anartha itself may still be present and may arise again in a subsequent situation. My question is this movement from being absorbed in the anartha to returning to remembrance an appropriate and healthy sign of progress within stages of anartha nivritti? Also, is there something more subtle that I should be attentive to?
Well, I don't think there's anything more subtle that you should be attended to. And I think that when some scars, impressions arise that are constitute an inclination for a value that is not real, which is or false, which is an anartha, then as a sadhaka, when we recognize that in the very recognition of it, we're distancing ourselves from it, right? So that's progress, and then we have to. That's where in sadhana, in the stage of bhajana kriya, there is some effort then to be made. We often say there's effort to get grace, and the way that you have described your own experience appears that that's exactly what you're doing, because the effort to distance oneself from the anartha and the samskar and see it as I said before, as an object rather than it being the subject. We are the subject, and those things are not us. We conflate them with ourselves. We merge with that anartha, that samskar, that vasana, and that's the problem. So again, in sadhana, we step back, so we distance. We just by stepping back and observing it, we're distancing ourselves, and then there's an effort to make that distance such that, in spite of recognizing it, which you may do, it doesn't overcome us, because you could recognize it, and still it could overcome you, and you find yourself engaging in things that later you're remorseful for, or you regret, or you feel was a waste of your time, and so on and so forth. So there's the recognition, good, but now there's some effort to avoid it overcoming me or myself merging with it, right? Which I lament if I do afterwards. So to avoid that, then we have to make effort. You got to make effort to recognize it, but then you do by hearing, chanting, then you're and so forth, and understanding the teachers. You're going to recognize an anartha for what it is. You distance yourself. I'm repeating myself, but you distance yourself from it. But now to distance yourself from in stage two. At stage one, you recognize it. So you're distinguishing yourself from it. Now stage two is that having done that, you don't allow it to overcome you. So more effort. So this is stage 2. And that effort, what you have done is that you have remembered Krishna. So let's take Bhaktivinoda Thakur's example in this regard. He has taken the uppercut Leela, the manifest Leela of Krishna in Braj, defeating different asuras. And in a creative way, he has identified the different asuras with different types of anarthas. You could use different anarthas. It's a flowing, kind of affair, if you will. And then he would remember those pastimes, remember Krishna, pray to Krishna. So this is an effort to get grace, right? Because the effort is not my effort alone, as it might be in a very virile yogin, perspective. This is recognizing my weakness is my strength. My weakness is that I'm prone to this, and although I'm a spark, but there is a fire. It's not, and so I take shelter of the fire. So there's the effort, but it's an effort to get grace. And of course, then stage 3. So then you don't allow the anartha to overcome you, and identify with it and so forth. But then you retire it eventually through this altogether. So that's stage 3. So that it no longer continues to show itself. So if you ignore someone, they'll go away. You can try it. If you ignore someone enough, they'll just go away. Silence is a very powerful means of dealing with an opponent that often exceeds in its power argumentation itself. So if you ignore the anarthas, they'll go away. If you ignore the thoughts, obviously the thoughts are connected to the anartha, they will retire in due course. So I think, as I say, what I'm saying is what you're doing is right, and it's good. And this is how I would look at it in terms of, let's say, breaking it down into different stages, if you will. Anartha nivritti, ki jai. Giving up nivritti, it means to give them up. So we give them up in a positive way, of course, by accepting something positive in its place, and that acceptance of the positive, Krishna, in relation to the negative. Well, there's some, like I say, there's some effort there, effort to bring Ram and Krishna into the picture, which really gives you an extraordinary advantage, if you will, in comparison to your own effort. So effort to get grace. That's the idea. Very good. What else?
So the next question is from Amrita Radhe.
And she says, Hare Krishna, please accept my humble obeisances, Srila Maharaj and all the Vaishnavas. I understand that chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra is our bhajan, the process through which we can awaken our love for Krishna. How important is archan or deity worship? Could you please give some guidelines on how to do archan at home as busy householders so that we can progress in bhakti? Your humble servant, Amrita Radhe Devi Dasi.
I would say that it says before, but the principal limbs of the body of bhakti, of Krishna bhakti, are hearing, chanting, and remembering, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam. And I would add to that, and half archan, archan seva, deity worship. And I say that because in the Vaidhi Marg sampradayas, like Ramanuja Sampradaya or Madhva Sampradaya, Archan is very, very prominent. It's a very prominent marg or anga. It's prominent in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, but I would say the greater emphasis is given on hearing and chanting. Nonetheless, that said, we see that the founding acharyas of the Sampradaya, the Goswamis, they established deities. They're busy. They must have been busy to organize, to build, oversee the construction of Madan Mohan Mandir and Radha Govinda Mandir. Radha Govinda Mandir in particular was an architectural wonder that I believe, at least to some extent, Rupa Goswami was the architect, and he incorporated into the architecture both Muslim and Hindu sensibilities. So demonstrating the harmonizing, if you will, nature of or capacity of Gaudiya Vaishnavism. So so Archan has a place. It's important, but it tends to be transcended in Rag Bhakti in due course, to an extent, as the deity begins to manifest within the heart, and Nam Bhajan becomes the preoccupation of devotees. We look at the example of Haridas Thakur. He was doing Nam Bhajan, and he was not allowed to do Archan, according to the Hindu system. But the Jagannath Dev, frozen in sattvika bhavas, thought of by the less informed to be of wood, he's actually frozen in sattvika bhavas and couldn't move. But the moving Bhagawan, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, came every day to give darshan and bring prasad to Haridas Thakur. So this is a reversal. The deity's coming to serve the devotee. So this is, of course, with great considerable progress in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. And also in that context, we find deity worship becomes very intimate in terms of personal exchanges between the deity and the devotee, which you're not going to find in the Vaidhi Marg. There it's all reverential. And so we incorporate the Rag, the Archan, and it is reverential. For all intents and purposes, but we see that the relationship between the devotee and Bhagawan, and the Archa Vigraha, the deity, typically turns into something very intimate. The example of well, many examples, but the example of Gauridas Pandit comes to mind, and there are many stories of his intimate dealings with the deity that would be uncharacteristic of Vaidhi Marg. So that's one thing. The other side of that is that, given what I've said, it was more characteristic in the time of the Goswamis for the householders to be involved in the deity worship than the renunciates who were doing Nam Bhajan, sitting doing Nam Bhajan, and experiencing Krishna in the heart, experiencing Krishna Lila through the name within. So within the name, the form is present, the past, the qualities of Krishna are present, the Leelas, associates of Krishna, and so forth. So when that form, the form of Bhagawan, starts to manifest, come out of the name in the heart of the devotee, then Archan will be, some distance from Archan may be created, and in terms of his everyday or her everyday practice. But then again, that same devotee who's experiencing the form through the name may bring the form out of his or her heart and put it in the hands of his disciples and say, build a temple there. This is Archan. So from the heart of one who's experiencing the form of Bhagavan through his name, he may come out and be made accessible in terms of his form by the grace of such a devotee that establishes a temple. Is what Rupa Goswami did, Sanatana Goswami. And so many temples have been established in this way. This is what the idea behind it. It's really the heart of the devotee where the Lord is appearing that is now put outside, that devotees can approach that and build a temple and so forth. And sometimes people ask, why build a temple? Why does God need a temple? Why does God need food? God's everywhere. Our reply is, yes, that's true. He's everywhere. The problem is you can't see him anywhere. And therefore, the Guru has kindly placed him here so that you can say, he's definitely here. He may be everywhere. That's an interesting theory and philosophical insight we can appreciate, but we cannot see that. But we can see him here. Now, if you conduct yourself here in the temple appropriately, then eventually you'll see him everywhere. Right? We tend to see him in the temple, but not everywhere. So we act in the temple one way, we act everywhere else otherwise. When those two come together, and our private life and our public life are the same, then there's no need for the temple anymore. You see? Then you're seeing him in your heart and everywhere. Prior to that, there's a need for the temple. There's a place for that. So there's a place for Archan. It's important. Now, again, typically within the Sampradaya, the Gaudiya Sampradaya, it would be the householders who would more characteristically be engaged in Archan than the renunciates. And then that said, there are two standards, so to speak. There is a temple that's established by the Acharya, and then maybe there may be renunciates living there taking care of the deity. Then Prabhupada wrote a letter once, and he said to the Mahant who was overseeing the preaching center and the property connected with it of Udarndatta Thakur in West Bengal. Prabhupada wrote a letter and said he would like to donate enough funds to purchase land for them so they would always have enough rice for the deity and grain, whatever. And he would like to have 25 sannyasis living there, taking care of the deity. Prabhupada said the same thing about Krishna Balaram and Vrindavan. He said he wanted 25 sannyasis to live there full time and take care of the deity. Those are two things that didn't happen yet, but so that's one thing. But then typically the householder situation ideally lends itself more to deity worship, because the householders, they have to earn, they have to buy things, they have to cook and so forth, and the deity does all of those things, right? Eats nicely and has nice clothes. You buy nice clothes for yourself, so you buy something for Krishna at the same time, right? And eventually you become more excited about decorating Krishna than about decorating yourself, more excited than about serving Krishna than satisfying your tongue, and so forth. Now, in this regard, there are also two standards. There's the standard in the temple, where maybe the renunciates are living. Typically, they live in the ashram, they have a temple, and they serve. And in that situation, the deity worship tends to be a little more actually formal. He's worshipped as a king. Whereas if he comes to the householder's house, he's like a visitor in your house, a guest in your house. So you treat him as a guest in your house. And when the guest lives in someone else's house, the guest is also a little bit less expectant of what the conditions might be. Oh, yeah, that's fine. I can take it. No problem. No problem. So this is the guest mentality. So Krishna adopts the guest mentality in the house of the householder, who tries the householder to worship him reverently and so forth, but it's not always possible. The dog comes in, and he said, "Get out!" And Krishna says, "No, that's okay. We'll let him bark. That's all right." Of course, you may not hear him say that, but or the children, and so forth. And sometimes, so you have to leave early, the schedule changes, so the deity accommodates in that situation. So it's a little bit more relaxed, but now we should not take this explanation as an excuse to be lax with deity worship in our home. So we should try to offer regulated and cleanly service and make our home grihete goloka bhai. Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, and I saw my house turn into Goloka Vrindavan. And that's very beautiful. First time I came to India, I was invited to come by Prabhupada to come to India. I think it was 1973 or 1974, and I was in Australia at the time. So we came, and the fellow who was leading the yatra in Australia had some relation with some Brahmin families in Madras. So we flew from Sydney to Madras, and we spent the night in the home of some, either they were Madhva or Ramanuja Brahmins family, I don't recall which. And so and the next morning was Ekadasi. And so this household couple was very pleased to have us there. And the next day we were going, to Calcutta. And so we all sat down for the breakfast, and they were serving out, and and it was Ekadasi. So no, it wasn't Ekadasi. That's a different occasion. We were sitting down to take prasad, and then one of the devotee next to me, asked them before taking anything, "Has this been offered?" And the man smiled. He said, "Prabhuji, the whole house is offered. The whole house is an offering." And I was like, "Well, I'm in the right place here. This is great." So it's very beautiful. So while Krishna is accommodating for the householder, the householder should respond, humbled by the accommodating nature of Krishna as a guest and so forth, and not use it as an excuse to be lax. So these are some thoughts about deity worship. That's why I say it's an important anga, but it's kind of half anga in a sense, in comparison to how it's very, significant, prominent, strict, and so forth in some of the more prominent Vaidhi Marg Sampradayas. Like, for example, in the Madhva mission in Udupi, I think they have 8 moths, and there are 8 acharyas, 8, or maybe there's 12. I can't remember. I think it's 8. At any rate, for 1 year, each acharya becomes in charge of the moth. And so if I'm in charge, I'm the acharya and I'm in charge this year, then for 8 years, I'm not in charge. And one of the other acharyas is. And so what those acharyas do for 8 years is prepare for their year. To increase the worship, to improve it, and so on and so forth. So that's the extent to which, as I say, it's more prominent as an anga of the Vaidhi Marg, that Udupi Krishna is said to have been Rukmini's deity. Of course, she had her own deity of Krishna, apparently, that Madhva acquired. That's a whole other interesting story. But so these are some thoughts about Archan. I hope that helps. Archan Marg ki jai.
Jai. So the next question is from Vishnu here in Brighton.
Yes.
Dhanyavad Maharaj, thank you for your time. My question relates to Gopastami. I've been reading Jaiva Dharma about Rasa Tattva, in particular Sakyaras. Now, there are these older gopas, I think they're called Suritsakas. Virabhadra and Mandalibhadra, and the Mother Jasoda has given them weapons. Walk in front and protect my Lala from demons and what have you. But in Uppercut Leela, there are no demons. There's only a conception, only a rumor. So, for somebody to be able to draw his sword, an act of service, so to speak, he has to be here in Bon Vrindavan always. How does it work?
You mean only? I mean, are you saying is that only possible in the Prakat Leela?
Yeah, is it only possible to actually carry a sword and draw a sword and protect Krishna like that? Yeah, in Bon Vrindavan.
Them have swords, some of them have bows and arrows and so forth. But in the Aprakat Leela, they also have.
They have.
Yeah, they have. And they don't know that there are no demons. There could be one.
All right.
There are rumors about them. There's rumors about Kamsa in Mathura and so forth. And so what you have in the Prakat Leela is there's nothing in the Prakat Leela that's not in the Aprakat Leela. But it may not be as Prakat in the Aprakat Leela. It may not be as manifest, but the seed of it, the spirit of it, the sentiment of it, that which gives rise to the emotion of Virarasa, for example,
Right.
to protect Krishna, let us say, nonetheless is present. But in the Prakat Leela, then it's more physically or readily played out. And this is one of the reasons that the birth is another example. So Krishna's birth takes place in the Prakat Leela, but it doesn't take place in Aprakat Leela. But the seed of it is there, so to speak. That's why, for these reasons, sometimes the Prakat Leela is thought to be more full. I've sometimes compared it to like they used to have a saying, I don't know if they still do it, filmed on location. It's better than making some fake mountains, in Hollywood. We just go to the Himalayas and film the film right there on location. That was like a plus. So the Prakat Leela is like human-like Leela on location within humanity. And humanity has, heavenly and hellish conditions. There are demons inside of even the people. So they manifest and they're manifestly present more fully in the Prakat Leela. In the Prakat Leela, excuse me. That's the difference. But in bhava, there's no difference. So the bhava is there, the feeling is there. But they've got the sword. They might pull them out, and I heard something, something like that. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
So the next question is from Braj Sundari.
And Braj Sundari says, I heard a devotee quoting Narayan Maharaj that one cannot practice humility, and that any attempt to practice it is in fact a symptom of pride, because real humility is a natural state and can only be bestowed upon us. Could you please say something about that? Thank you.
Well, I said, I think it was last week, I made a point that in one sense, within the Shikshastakam, where humility is called for, there are two stages of humility. One is a humility arising out of the mind, or let us say spiritual intelligence, introspection. Another is arising out of the soul itself. And so this is what we find in the second and the third verses of Shikshastakam. So, for example, in the second verse, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is lamenting that in spite of the virtues of the name, which he calls out there are many of the names there, which is a virtue. Some may like one name, some may like another name. So we've got many names. There's a statement in this regard in Vedanta Sutra that in the commentary, Govinda Bhashya of Baladev, that I think it said that all words are names of the names of God, properly understood, something like to that effect. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained when he came back from having been initiated by Ishvara Puri, he began to explain grammar like that. Everything in the grammar was indicating Krishna. So many names anyway, and he says filled with all the Shakti, and they're available to chant anytime, any circumstance, and still they have efficacy. Even if you chant in your sleep, they have efficacy. But still, the humility is that, but I have no attraction for that. I'm humbled by that. So there's a kind of a mental or intellectual humility that shows up there, and a healthy kind of remorse. You've understood why. I heard a fellow was a guru from our own paribar, not in our particular mission, but another larger, the largest institution, and he went to one Babaji in Vrindavan, and he asked, why is it that we, how can we chant with feeling and weep? And I mean, I heard the answer and I thought, well, wow, that's right there in Shikshastak. I mean, the whole thing has been answered. It's a simple question if you put it together. The reason that we don't chant and weep is because, well, we have anarthas we're attached to. That's a real simple thing. Now, what to do with that? Mahaprabhu shows in Shikshastakam. So I consider that the humility that he expresses there, he says, he's saying he's lamenting, but I believe it's an expression of his own humility. It's certainly not pride. To see my situation, I'm so fallen. That the name is so generous, and instead of taking advantage of the name, I'm giving attention to anarthas. They're getting in the way, and still the name stays with me. That's one of his virtues, as mentioned by Rupa Goswami in his Namastakam. He says there's the name and the named, Bhagavan's name and Bhagavan's form, and they're equal. But the name at the same time is more generous than the form, because you will offend the form, the name will stay with you. So here he's saying even the name stays with you, even if you offend the name. Some anarthas can come from offenses, but of course some can come from just attachments and so forth. But at any rate, I think it's a form of well-reasoned humility. I should just see my condition here, So this is a humility first stage. Second stage, Trinadapi Sunichena. This is a very high bar. This is coming from the soul, because this verse, as we understand it, corresponds with the stage of Nishta. Nishta means there's some contact with it. The principal anarthas have been removed. The practice of bhakti is so steady that the seeds of anarthas that are still present don't have the opportunity to sprout, because they're constantly being watered by the practice. So they can't fructify. And so the natural, as Pujapad Bhakti Narayan says, humility is arising there. One feels in touch with Krishna practically, and is the more that the finite jiva, as Pujapad Sridhar would like to say, comes actually in touch with the infinite. Well, humility is, as Narayan Maharaj says, that's a given. The more the finite comes in touch with the infinite, the more it knows what it means to be finite. Oh my God, I'm finite. And what the infinite means, and that the infinite has taken a finite like form, that it can relate to me in a finite like way. This is all like overwhelming realization and experience, that out of which this kind of humility that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu mandates, really, or tells us that the fruits of the fruit of chanting comes quickly when this is in place. So from Nishta, I would liken it to if you take a mountain and you want to go, you're on one side, you want to go to the valley on the other side. It's hard work getting to the top, but it's easy going down. So Nishta is like you're at the top. You can see the valley below. There's no more room for mental doubts. Does he exist? Am I doing the right thing? Am I awake? A lot of these non-dualists, am I awakening? I'm thinking, you might know if you were. Why do you have to ask? So I think there's something to be said for kind of a intellectual, well understood, theoretical humbling of oneself that Mahaprabhu speaks about in the second verse, an experience of Bhagwan that fosters a natural humility in the soul. It's an uncovering of the self, which is small, finite in comparison to the infinite. So I would think about it something like that. Perhaps Narayan Maharaj is, we'd have to see the context. Perhaps he's emphasizing that focus on Krishna, and humility will come. Krishna doing bhajan, and humility will come naturally. At the same time, I think Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur has talked about two types of nishta. Nishta in terms of hearing and chanting, steadiness in those practices, and then steadiness in humility and in tolerance and in giving honor to others, which the two of them should come together, and the latter three that I mentioned should come out of the former. But they serve one another. So I think that said, that there are just things in our lives, if we're just aware, that will humble us as we go forward. Just go stand in front of the ocean. You don't feel very big there. You're humbled by the mountain. By the wonders of even the ability in men and women that are sometimes exhibited that are beyond our own capacity, which Krishna has identified himself with. Life paid attention to is a humbling experience, I would say. It's natural. So maybe Narayan Maharaj speaking like that. Pay attention and you'll become humble. How can you not? Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj ki jai. Shikshastakam ki jai. What else?
The next question is from Gunjan Sharma.
And Gunjan writes, Pranam, dear Guru Maharaj. If Sri Krishna is Vishai and Radharani is Ashray, how does a Manjari tread this path? Her Madhurya for Krishna is so subtle and hidden at the same time, her Dasyam for Sri Radha is her life air. If Krishna is the Vishai, how does her love for her Ashray, Sri Radha, exceed more than the Vishai itself? Thank you.
Well, this is called Bhavalas. So Rupa Goswami is writing about the Sthayi Bhav, the dominant emotion, and he goes through them. And he makes the point at the onset of that chapter that Krishna is the Vishai, the object of love in Bhakti Rasa. So whether it be Vatsalya Ras, Madhurya Ras, Sakya Ras, Dasya Ras, Krishna is the Vishai. And at a certain point then in that chapter of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he seems to, a question in his own mind seems to arise as to what some readers might ask. And that is that you're talking about this love in Vrindavan, in particular, in the spiritual world, but Vrindavan in particular. And everyone's object of love is Krishna. But then what is the relationship then between one devotee and another? So Rupa poses this question, his own question, and answers it, like an anticipated question that it comes to mind. And he says, this is called suhritrati, love of the friend. There's love of Krishna and there's love of the friend. And love of the friend serves as a sanchari bhav, in that a sanchari bhav comes and goes, and it augments the sthayi bhav. That doesn't mean that love for the friend, sometimes you love your friend, sometimes you don't in Vrindavan, but its prominence, surfacing, sthayi bhav, that sanchari bhav, surfacing and taking some precedence in one's transcendent, transpsychological, nature. What it does when it happens, the love of the friend, each friend, this friend means all the different devotees. Nanda is the friend of Yasoda, and the friend of Vrishabhanu Maharaj, and so on and so forth. Krishna and his boyfriends and girlfriends, they're all friends of one another, and so forth, right? In a broad sense. So Krishna, more than they love one another, and their love for one another, which is a sanchari bhav, augments their love for Krishna. That's why it all works, you see. The husband and the wife both love Krishna more than they love one another. And their love for one another augments their love for Krishna, because they both want to serve Krishna more than they want to be served or serve one another. And they'll serve one another in relation to serving Krishna. So it's a good system. It works because Krishna is the perfect object of love. So having said that, Rupa Goswami says that there are, the commentaries there would call out the fact that in Vrindavan, some devotees love Krishna more than the friend, but some love Krishna and the friend equally. And then some love the friend more than Krishna. That's peculiar, he says, and that's called bhavalas. Now, the verse just speaks of bhavalas, but the commentaries explain, and they use a Madhurya Rasa example. The example does not pertain only to Madhurya Rasa, but it's a good example, because we know that in Madhurya Rasa, some of the gopis, they are, friends of Radha, and they love Radha and Krishna equally. There are some gopis that love Krishna more than any other friend. Some love the friend, this friend being Radha, and Krishna equally. And then there's a unique group that loves the friend more than Krishna. This is called bhavalas. Now, this could be applied to different rasas. One could love Nityananda Prabhu more than Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We call it Nityananda Bhavalas, Advaita Bhavalas. It's possible. But the example given is Madhurya Rasa, and it's a good one, because there we find a very special case that's well known, and that is that of the Manjaris. They love Radha a little more than Krishna. And so Rupa Goswami says in this instance, rather than the sanchari bhav, the love for the friend, augmenting the sthayi bhav, the love for Krishna, the sthayi bhav for Krishna, in effect, turns into a sanchari bhav, and it nourishes the handmaidens of Radha's love for Radha. So this is an interesting situation in which the Vishai, the object of love, becomes Radha and Krishna, with a focus on Krishna, on Radha. So the Manjari is of course attracted to Krishna. He's a romantic ideal, but that love, romantic love, is subjugated by the sense that the math of it is to please Krishna the most will not be to pursue him in a romantic relationship myself, but to bring a better, more suited consort, the best of them, Radha, in touch with him, to bring them together. This is the idea. So the Manjari wants to bring Radha and Krishna together, and takes the side of serving Radha. So it's a form of dasya, bhakti, within Madhurya. And Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that this is the best, this is the preferred type of Madhurya Rasa, and it's the prominent type of Madhurya Rasa we find in the Gaudiya Sampradaya. So that should shed some light on your question. I hope it does. We have a comment here from Kishore Krishna, who says,
connected to Ashray and Vishai.
Can you hear him? Yes.
In Circle of Friends, in a footnote, you write that Krishna is both Rasa and Rasika, in that he is both the Vishai, the object of Sakirasa for his friends, and he's both the Ashray, the shelter of love for his friends. And you also write that Jiva Goswami comments that for the most intimate of the intimate devotees, there is no distinction between Ashray and Vishai. And so I'm wondering if that is specific to Sakirasa because of the equality among friends, or if that happens in other rasas as well.
Yeah, no, well, there's two things that you're asking about. Krishna is the object of love for all the devotees. He's the Vishai. But for Krishna, the devotees are the object of love. And he's the Ashray. For Krishna's not, so Krishna tastes rasa, but he is not the object. He is the experiencer of that rasa, and the devotee is the object. So there's a famous verse from the Bhagavatam when Krishna enters the wrestling arena in Mathura, and there it's described how different devotees are seeing him in different ways, and the different rasas are all outlined there. Rupa Goswami is drawing from them for his rasa theory. And towards the very end of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the reverse is given, a verse describing Krishna lifting Govardhan Hill and how he, as the Ashray, experienced different rasas from Shanta all the way to Madhurya in relation to the different devotees. So that's one thing. The other thing is that in intimate love, the Ashray and Vishai sensibilities dissolve. Rupa Goswami has made a statement to this effect. And Kishore is asking, does this pertain to all the rasas? Or just, yes, it does. It's because in love, well, there is no other. In love, there is no other. Now, this, what I call this non-duality decorating itself. Decorated non-duality, right? Ornamented non-duality. Ours is a school of non-dualism. This is an interesting, topic, big topic, and it's significant. It needs to be brought out more because duality and non-duality in modern philosophy mean certain things, whereas in Vedanta, there are different forms of non-duality. that and so you can't take Gaudiya Vaishnavism and just place it in one of these Western constructs of duality or non-duality and say you have to look, especially if you want to talk about non-duality in terms of consciousness being the underlying reality. This is where the world's going. You have to realize this. Philosophically speaking, the world has tried, the minds of the world, the pygmy minds of the world have tried to reduce mind and consciousness to matter and say there's only matter, non-duality. There is nothing else. And that they're having a hard time doing it. And they're failing at it. And so as time goes on, more and more people are becoming heretics from the physicalism, naturalism. And where do they go? They go to India in their head. They go to the idea that consciousness is fundamental reality. And then they find, oh, this has been talked about in Vedanta. And where do they go? Advaita Vedanta, the whale swallowing Timingila of Advaita Vedanta. Everything is consciousness. Everything is consciousness, and there is no self. But that is a predeterminate contradiction. You can say myself is an illusion, but you can't rationally say I don't exist. I'm sorry, that doesn't work. So to say, for example, that, well, this conventional sense of self, man, woman, Indian, black, white, this is not real, that there is no self. We agree with that. But who's saying it? Who's the subject that's making such a an observation, right? It's an important point. What I mean to say by that, unless you slip in the metaphysic, for example, of Advaita Vedanta, your conclusion will not naturally go from there's no self in terms of this body-mind complex individual to there's only consciousness. It will not go from there, the second step, there's only consciousness, to there's no self at all. That doesn't follow. That only follows if you insert Advaita Vedanta and you think that's the whole explanation of consciousness from the East, just see. But it's not. It's one part of, a greater part of theistic Vedanta that says, wait a minute, contentless consciousness is meaningless. Contentless consciousness, it's meaningless. Consciousness of nothing. What consciousness is of something. That's what it is. It is of something. To say there's no self in any sense, not even a consciousness constituted self. Yes, there's no self, this material combination of body, mind, and so forth. That self is here today and gone tomorrow. That's subject to change and so forth. Consciousness is the underlying reality, but there's a consciousness constituted self as well. This is Vaishnava Vedanta, right? Where the self has relational qualities, right? We call it Sambandha Gyan, right? Yeah. So we say the bliss of the jiva is very limited in compared to the relation of the bliss of Krishna. To say this is only when sometimes the Gaudiya Acharyas say this, they're only speaking about one aspect of the self. It's Gyan Swarup. Gyan Swarup means I exist. The awareness or the knowledge that I am, that I exist. Without knowledge of what my relationship with other things and with Bhagavan are, that I exist. That bliss is very limited. But the relational bliss brings us the full bliss of Krishna. So anyway, so this is a popular thing these days. So the world going from materialism, material monism, to a spiritual monism. Consciousness is the underlying reality, and there's no self. And you become a witness for a while, and then you do away with the witness altogether. And whoever's doing away with it, they don't talk about that. That's like, what? That doesn't make sense there. So, we pick up from there and say, wait a minute, this is not a logical progression. The logical progression is, okay, we're not the body, mind, self. Consciousness is reality. I am consciousness, and I am also. Am I the whole of consciousness? Well, that doesn't make sense necessarily. Why not? I'd be an individual spark of the consciousness. That follows, and that then explains why I'm in the predicament that I'm in. So I think that Vaishnava Vedanta follows much more logically. And this popular idea that there's no self whatsoever requires, it's not a logical progression, it requires importing Advaita Vedanta into the thinking. And so we have some, Nirvisesha, Sunyavadi, Paschatya Satarni. We have something to say about that. So now, forgive me, but I forget the question I was answering, and I know this is a bit tangential, but what was the question?
The distinction between Ashray and Vishaya.
Oh, the distinction between go to rasa, the Ashray and Vishaya. So I'm saying that we're ultimately a school of non-duality, and in love there is no other. There is no other. So the concepts of Vishaya and Ashray, they at a certain point they no longer become, recognizable, if you will. It's not that we change, it's not that we become God or anything like that, but the love forges a union in which there is no sense of any other. And therefore, we're a school of non-dualism. What do we call it? Ornamented, decorated non-dualism. Advaigyan Tattva. So you can see this is interesting, topic. It should be written about. Gaudiya Vaishnavism just a bit ahead of the curve here of where the philosophical world will go. Artificial intelligence is trying to derail this progression I'm speaking about, but it's a dead end. It's a dead end. It's artificial. That's another subject. So, what else? We got 3 minutes.
There's 2 follow-ups, and the next question also ties in, so we might need to continue next week also. But the first follow-up is from Uddhava.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. The live went on here in Philippines for a second, so I don't know if you mentioned it. But I would like to know if the Priyanarma Sakas do they have equal love of Krishna and Radha, or are the mirror of the Manjaris, meaning that they take the side of Krishna and have more affection towards him, or is maybe depending like on individual basis?
It could be individual, but they have a little bit more love for Krishna than for Radha. They have the same type of Madhurya influence that the Manjari has, but the Manjari is in Madhurya Rasa, and that is a type of Madhurya Rasa, where the Priyanarma Saka is in Sakya Rasa and has the influence of that type of Madhurya Rasa, where the friend of Krishna wants to bring Radha and Krishna together. But they have a little more love of Krishna than Radha. But one might have more love for Subal than Krishna. That's also possible. Or maybe Bhavalas. So there's possibilities, all kinds of possibilities. What else?
And Sajan also has a follow-up.
Dandavats Maharaj. So what you were mentioning about there not being a self and being very kind of the whole thing about, what you were mentioning in regard to Advaita Vedanta, my direct experience over many decades is that just as in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's different levels of understanding of the highest principle of Gaudiya Vaishnavism, a great difference between the Kanishta Adhikaris and the Uttama Adhikaris. It's the same in the Advaita Vedanta communities. There are different levels of perspective and understanding. There are very kind of people who don't have the real. They speak the way you were bringing out, the way you were portraying them. But those are the ones that are that don't have the true understanding, the highest perspective. Whereas it's our experience that even the foremost Advaita Vedanta acharyas of the 20th century, Ramana Maharshi and Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, they said all there is the self, with a capital S, of course, meaning Paramatma, pure spirit, expressing, as all sentient beings. So there are very different levels of perception and understanding in Advaita Vedanta, the same as in Gaudiya Vaishnavism or in any
Well, it's not the same. They're different doctrines. You can't merge the two doctrines. They're not the same doctrines. When they say that there's only one self, they're saying that the individual self is an illusion, and there's only Brahman. And in Gaudiya Vedanta, the individual self is not an illusion. It's a real metaphysical, an ontological reality. There is an individual jiva, and it is not one in all respects with Brahman. In the Advaita Vedanta of Ramana Maharshi and others of that particular school, that we are generous in Gaudiya Vaishnavism to refer to that a similar possibility to what they speak about, which we call Sayuja Mukti, a similar possibility. But in Sayuja Mukti, as explained by Gaudiya Vaishnavism, the individual self is not an illusion. It's a real vastu, and it can identify with Brahman to such an extent that its own individuality, sense of it, is lost, but it's not lost. Therefore, Sanatana Goswami says, even those who merge in Brahman, it's possible that by Krishna's grace, they could come to Vaikuntha. It's possible. So, whereas in Advaita Vedanta or in the school, from the persons you're talking about, their perspective, the way they explain their experience is very different, in that they say there is no individual jiva, just like the body, mind, or an illusion. The individuality of the jiva is illusion. There is only Brahman, only Brahman. And when they speak only Brahman, there is a very strict form of non-dualism. Therefore, there can be no experience. Whenever they say my experience of non-dualism is such and such, you can say you're not speaking about non-dualism in a Advaitic sense, because there's nothing to experience. There is no other. It's therefore, in their school of thought, the way they describe their experiences, there's no experience of bliss. The self is bliss. Brahman is bliss. Brahman is knowledge. Brahman is eternity. Whereas we experience bliss. So, I mean, even what's his name? Bengali.
Ramakrishna?
Ramakrishna. He said, it's better to taste sugar than to be sugar.
Yeah.
He was a devotee of the goddess. So it's important. There are subtle, or significant distinctions between the two doctrines. Obviously, though, many, as you say, many of the young or whatever, Western or wherever followers of the persons you mentioned misrepresent them. That's certainly true. Okay, so good. Well, just to emphasize what I was saying in relation to this before, I'll conclude with this, something I just jotted down here. What is coherent is the claim that I mistakenly take the body, mind, or emotional complex to be myself. And let me explain it again. What is coherent is the claim that I mistakenly take the body, mind, and emotional complex to be myself when it is not. What is incoherent is the claim that I merely think I am a self when in fact there is no self at all. The error presupposes a subject who errs. One can be mistaken about what one is, but not about whether or not one is. I cannot say rationally, I'm dead, or that I don't exist. That's a performative contradiction. Do you understand? So it's one of our arguments for the actual existence of a Jivatma. Now, it's possible that, persons like Ramana Maharshi and so forth, they've entered into Sayuja Mukti, but they've spoken about it in Advaitin terminology. And fair enough, because in Sayuja Mukti, according to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, one only experiences part of the self. That's called the Gyan Swarup of the self. Means it's well, kind of close to it. Contentless awareness is a little different than awareness of that I am. But if I identify with Brahman, then you could say it's somewhat similar. Whereas the Gyan Shakti, or the Dhammbhuta Gyan, the attribute of the Jiva, by which it knows other things, knows Bhagavan, and it has knowledge of his relationship, which is bhakti itself, then that's not realized there. So one could enter into Sayuja Mukti in Gaudiya Vaishnava terms and explain it, I suppose, like Advaita Vedanta, because you've entered through that school with a little bit of bhakti. Remember, that's what they do. We could harmonize it in that way. All right, so we've gone a little bit over time. Nice to be with you all, and I hope that we can again come together next week. Gaur-Nityananda ki jai.
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi.
Haribol. Srila Guru Maharaj ki jai. So yeah, thank you everybody for your questions. As you know, there's a few follow-ups, and even the next question ties in quite nicely. Karan, I know Karanam is probably waiting for his question to be connected here, so I'm sure we'll have some more discussion on this topic next week. So yeah, apologies for all the questions we didn't get to today, and we'll
Madhav's follow-up will be first next week, because
sure. So yeah, so have a nice week, have a nice Christmas, I guess, and we'll